and now joining us. I cannot wait because we got another game tonight and it's starting. This is it, the last week of the regular season. And joining us, he does such a wonderful job covering the Sixers for the Inquirer. It's my daily read. He is my main man, Keith Pompey. Keith, good morning.
What's popping? What's up, man? How you doing?
Yo, you look good, brother. I actually get to see you now when we do our chats.
yeah. I like the show, man. I'm a big fan.
Thanks, brother. Where do we show your high school picture? We have your high school yearbook picture.
Oh Lord.
You look great. No, man. And then wait, we had
you
running track.
I was the only person in school that had a mustache. That was my claim to fame.
I love it. But let's get down to business a little bit. Dude, I'm starting to feel the tingle, man. I love the way things are falling into place. Give me your 50,000-foot view.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. When you say to yourself, you mean y'all needed to go into San Antonio and win in double overtime and Tyrese Maxey had to get 52 points and you walk away excited, people are going to say, what are you talking about, dude? That's like one of the worst teams in the league. But the way that they did it, the way that they had several guys step up, we're talking about it right now. And they have a 5-game winning streak going on. Once Joel's last game that he played, he had 30 and 12 in 23 minutes.
He's ridiculous. I'm sorry. Yeah. He's ridiculous, that dude.
Yeah. And he's talking about like the game I hadn't sped up in my head yet. So, I was one of those guys where you look at the team and you say after they made the trades that the team was worse, right? But now you look at Joel coming back. And you look at and you're seeing how things are starting to fall in place. Like, for instance, the Milwaukee Bucks are struggling. There's other teams who are struggling. Look, Cleveland slid all the way down to number 5, right? So, I think the Sixers, there is some hope now. There's some hope that if they get the 7 seed or higher, that maybe they can do something in the playoffs. And if you would have asked me the same thing 3 days ago, I would have said, come on, man, why are you asking me that? Because you know that they're going to get smacked, but it looks good. So it's some optimism.
Well, and here's kind of why I'm very excited. And obviously everything hinges on him on the big fella. And you look at him, and I was talking to Legs about this, and Tim Legler and I were talking about Embiid now having the freshness, right? Not having gone through a whole season. Now, obviously, he's got to get his wind back, and that will come. But the freshness in his legs will be there for what could be a sustained run. And then the Maxey piece, Keith, he basically filled the suit, right? Like the suit fits him as being Joel's co-star. Like everything about it. Like I got excited over San Antonio because I looked and it was Maxey doing whatever he had to do to try to win. And, the fact is he plays with a joy. He's not going to have any issues like Harden and when it comes to sagging and bringing his team down. So those two factors had me legitimately excited. So
we lost Keith.
Oh, okay.
We'll bring him back once he gets back.
All right. As soon as we get Keith back, we'll bring you. We'll make sure we get him back. But that piece of it really excites me. Like when I look at, I keep looking at having Embiid and Maxey and that 2-star thing. I think we have him, JP. It really that's to me the basis of optimism.
Yeah, I thought you guys didn't like my purple shirt or something, and you cut me off or something like that.
Never.
I thought that's what it was. Nah, you were talking about Maxey, right? Maxey being the co-star, and you are correct. I think that from day one, this was like one that there was, never a competition, like coming in there, like, Maxey, it's kind of like, as the guys say around the way, yeah, this is my young boy and this is my old head. My old head has my best interest. He knows that once I leave, he's going to hand me the mantle. He also knows that once he can't do things, he's going to look at me to take that starring role. And that's how it is. And if we're going to be real, like, let's be real. Like, Maxey is so much better. He's great, but he's so much better when Joel's there, because because of Joel's presence, teams can't defend Maxey the way that they want to, because they're just going to open things up. So you are correct. I mean, I think that this is a relationship that a lot of people don't know from day one. Joel can be a little moody. I mean, let's just be real. But Maxey was that one guy who would always come in the locker room and make Joel smile. Like, and it was always like, why are you so happy, man? We got to go to practice. And then, so, you know what I mean? So you have that. And like, there's also times then there's breaking actions. You can see the two looking at each other, smiling, chatting. So, you know what? I think that this is the best partnership that Joel Embiid has had, because the thing is first of all, he's not on the same level when he came in the stage of his career as like a Jimmy Butler, as a James Harden. But at the same time, he's a young guy. He's only going to get better. But at the same time, we don't have to worry about whose team is it. We know it's Joel's, and we know Max is just excited to be the coach.
Yeah, you're spot on. So let's talk about how it fills in around them, right? And I'm curious, because having those two creates all that space, and now you have a lot of role players. You see Oubre playing well, right? I think we got Keith got froze.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So yeah, that poor Keith got that face frozen. But what'll be interesting? What'll be interesting is to see how it all plays around him.
Yeah.
With all the role players. You're going to have Tobias, and you're going to have Oubre. You're going to have Buddy Hield off the bench. The Buddy Hield thing, I keep waiting, and I don't know. I still feel bullish on Hield, just because of what he could do.
Right.
Just because he could shoot the ball and extend the floor.
Yeah, and if you just put this team around a bunch of wing players who can shoot and play defense, especially when Maxey and Joel are just gonna be taking on Joel's gonna be taking on those double teams, so it's gonna open up the floor for everyone else. Everything should follow suit for this team once we get the ball rolling, we get into this playoffs here.
Yeah, I again, and to me the biggest factor, and we have talked. We have him. Yep. Let's try it one more time. Sorry about that, Keith. Hey, buddy. Let's see.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, sorry about that, brother. It's the new tech, baby. Like, it's the new way. We're close, right? But sometimes you get the glitches of the whatever internet's happening. The other aspect is we're talking about the role players and how they all fill in around those two. You got, different. You'll have Oubre, who's playing really good ball, right? You'll have Tobias, Buddy coming off the bench. How do you kind of see the rotation?
What I see the rotation is right now. I mean, and no offense to Tobias, but I think he's been struggling, and so there's two ways to look at it: a good way and a bad way. Like Buddy, I'm not Buddy. Kelly Oubre has shown us that he can fit in and he can be the guy. Like, I look at him right now because he's just been the most dependable outside of Maxey and Embiid. So you got to look at him to be the guy that does it. Now, the thing is, Tobias has been struggling. He's been banged up. And Buddy Hield has really struggled, right? So you look at that and you say to yourself, okay, they're winning games right now with these two guys not playing well at all. So the hope is when they get in the playoffs, if they can turn that around, they could just become a better team when everything snaps or everything gets into play. But if we're talking about rotation, and here's another guy that people haven't really been talking about because he's been injured, DeAnthony Melton. DeAnthony Melton has only played 5 games since December the 30th, but right now he's questionable for the night's game. So that tells you that he's coming back. So what I'm saying is, like, right now you look at it and this team can only go up. But if we're going to do a rotation, it's going to have to be like Kelly Oubre, Tobias in the starting lineup, right? That's the 5 with Kyle Lowry. But then, when we're talking about coming off the bench, you're going to have Buddy. You're also going to have Nico Batum, Paul Reed. And then I feel like you have campaign, but I really feel like it's going to come down to, like, who are they playing, who's playing well.
Yeah, the
That's
matchups.
matchups. But But I do the fact that Tobias is struggling, and I know that a lot of people are down on him, but you factor in they're only going to get better once he turns it on. The same thing for Buddy Hield, who's like been shooting 12% the last 3 games from three. So once he gets it going, I feel like the team is only going to be better.
Well, it's so fascinating because the heel thing now with the space that Joel will provide. I mean, you have to extrapolate that at some point he's going to feel it, right? Like at some point, Buddy Hield's is going to start knocking down those shots. That's what he's always done. It's weird because the first 5 games he was out of his mind, and then we haven't seen that since.
Yeah, and you know what, but also those first 5 games, it was also one of those things where it was a heavy dose of Buddy. Like you remember, people were injured. It was him and Campaign, which was crazy. Like they first came out, the first game that they played, they were like the number 1 and the number 2 option. I feel like what Buddy has to do is he has to just get a little bit more comfortable in regards to like the role that they have. But you are correct with Joel out there. You think that things are going to work out for him because and they will, but it's just to me it was like early on it was, if you look at his shooting percentage, it really wasn't that good, but he shot the ball a lot and he ended up getting the points.
You know, to me, the whole thing is different. And one of the reasons why it's different is because of Nick Nurse. And you have an X and O guy. Now, tell me if you agree with this, right? I think Nick Nurse, and you saw it the other night in San Antonio, like drawing up plays, the whole thing. He's the best in-game coach that they've had really since probably Larry Brown, right? Like when you look at what he can do, you know, that wasn't Brett. Brett wasn't that guy. Doc was more of a CEO. Like I give Doc credit for, you know, helping develop Maxey, for helping Joel get that elbow, you know, closer shot work it going on. But when it comes to in game, they haven't had a guy like Nick Nurse, a true X and O strategist in there.
Yeah, and not a knock to those other two, but it's not even close.
Right.
I mean, no, it's not. And that's the thing. Like Nick will see something, he'll do something outside the box, and people think it's crazy. And then next thing you know, it's working out. I mean, you know, the thing is, think about this. He closed out a game with Ricky Council IV and KJ Martin, right? And both of those guys contributed. They contributed well. You know, he does things that, you know, some players may get upset with, like, okay, Nico Batum, you're off tonight, but if we need you to come in and do an inbounds for 1 second, you got to play. And he gets guys to buy in to do that. Because most players are like, what you mean? I'm not doing that. If I'm off, I'm off. You're not going to mess up my stats, right? So, yeah, Nick Nurse is a great coach, and you look forward to seeing what it is. I mean, let's think about it. We remember how when he went up against Brett, went up against Doc in the playoffs, and he came out with these crazy lineups, he did crazy defensive schemes, and they seemed to work against the Sixers. Yeah, he's a great coach, man. I have to give him credit for that a lot.
How is his temperament? I mean, you know, spent the year with him this year. What do you think about his temperament, his relatability to the players? Tell us a little bit more. Take us inside a little bit more.
No, here's the thing about Nick, and I talked this, and I spoke to people in Toronto when he first got the job, right? And they said the thing about Nick is, you know, he doesn't lie to players, he doesn't do anything, but initially they're all going to wonder like what's going on, and I think we had some of that, and the reason being is because Nick is a smart guy, and he's always thinking towards the playoffs. So he'll come out there, and let's say one guy will start one game, and then the next game he doesn't start. He doesn't get a lot of minutes, but then someone else will. And he does a crazy lineup. And the whole thing is when he was in Toronto, and it's the same here, people are like, okay, what's going on? Like, how come we didn't do this at the end of the game? How come we didn't do that? Well, what Nick is doing is he's getting it prepared for the playoffs. And what happens is when the playoffs come, a lot of the guys in Toronto were like, oh, we get it. We get it. And I feel like it's the same way, you know, here. Now, here's the one thing I will say about Nick Nurse. Think about this. He had to deal with the James Harden thing at the beginning of the season, right? He answered questions. And then all of a sudden they traded James. And then all of a sudden there goes the Kelly Oubre thing. Guess what happened? Nick Nurse was the guy out there at answering questions about, Kelly Oubre, if he got in a car accident or was he hit by somebody, whatever happened, right? Then all of a sudden you get the Joel Embiid injury. You get the trade, you get this. And it just seems like that we look at it, it's been a roller coaster of a season, one where a coach would get fed up and this and that. And he's been the one out there answering the questions. He's been the one out there like, look, they're on a 6-game winning streak right now after going through all that stuff. Now they have Joel back. So I feel like that this guy, the way that he handled all that, the way that he didn't change. I mean, I believe they had like 33 different starting lineups, if not more, this season. So for him to be able to still have his team in contention for a playoff spot speaks volumes of him as a coach.
Yeah, it really does. Like he seems to be able to, kind of make it all sticky, like keep everyone together, and he's got that kind of like mentality. And it's funny. It feels like you've been on this beat. I mean, you know this franchise inside and out. It feels a little different this year. I mean, we'll see. We know how good Boston is and the whole thing, but it does have a different vibe and I don't know if it's because of Simmons and then Harden, and then you replace that with Maxey's growth, and that automatically changes the feel around the whole squad. But it does feel different now than it has.
Yeah, it does, and I feel like I think I think it starts with the coach, right? It does. I mean, also, Joel is a better player. I mean, he's the best player in the league.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does have a different vibe. Now, again, we'll see how it goes in the playoffs, right? To see if they can take advantage of some of the things we feel like they can. But I think that's when we really find out. But yeah, I mean, think about it. Maxey is an all-star this year. Maxey had 3 games of 50 points or more. I mean, Joel Embiid was putting up video game numbers that we haven't seen since Wilt Chamberlain. And to be honest with you, none of us were really around, besides the old heads, around to see Wilt. So the stuff that Joel was doing this season, no one in their lifetime, like the 30 or the 40 and under crowd saw this, right? So it's like, yeah, there is a completely different feel with this squad. And then guys were bought in. They had a bunch of role players. I mean, when the team was rolling, it kind of reminded me of the 2001 squad. And what I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
you had
The Euros.
the Euros, but you had the Euros. But what you had is you had a star in Allen Iverson, and you had a bunch of role players that bought in. But the difference was that team didn't have a Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were talking about yes. No, you know what? That's fascinating. You're right on, because it was all role players around AI. I don't know. I was thinking earlier
You,
the
you talk
process.
about, yeah, when they had, but yeah, I mean, if you think about it. Like when they were rolling, they had a bunch of hard hat guys
Yeah,
who were
George Lynch, Tyrone Hill,
Tyrone,
Mutombo. Yeah.
and
No,
then
that's a good point.
look at this when they were rolling, you had Embiid and those guys. But the one thing that team didn't have, they didn't have a legitimate second star. Like you
No.
had Embiid, you know what I mean? But he was kind of like a role player too. But this team had Tyrese Maxey. So, you know what I mean? That's why it was so hard to deal with when Embiid got hurt, because everything crumbled a little bit. But that's also why Nick
That's a
Nurse is
great point. Keith, that's a brilliant point. And you know what's interesting? It's also one to keep in mind for next year, because you have the clean slate, right? You have just Tyrese and Joel. And how do you build it? Like, do you need to go 3-star system? Now, I know there's the cap piece and, whether it's Paul George or whatever it is, but it also is something to keep in mind that, is 2 stars more effective than 3?
I mean, I think so. I mean, like you look at Miami and they had 3 stars, but see, here's the thing: they had 3 stars, but one of the stars had to convert to become a role player, right? And, you know what I mean? The same thing with the Boston Celtics, like Ray Allen. Like, yeah, they was like, okay, Ray, you're that guy, but I'm sorry, Ray, we need you to be in the corner and hit threes, right? So the thing is, if you can get a guy that's going to say, willing to get paid and take less of a role, it's going to work out. But if you got a guy talking about, I need the ball, and we all know that it's going to be Joel and then Tyrese, then maybe you might be better off just getting, a solid point guard to pair with, or more,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lead. It's just one of those things where you just have to be careful, because this team dynamic was good and it can go back to being good. You just got to make sure there's somebody who's going to fit in and just welcome the role that you need from that. Because I believe it's to this particular point right now that you can't say to Tyrese, hey, you were great. You had 350-point games. You made the All-Star. You have to go back to being the third option. I think that bus has sailed, or that ship has sailed. You can't do that anymore.
No, I think it's spot on. Spot on. Do we have Keith in high school? Take a look. Here's my man, Keith Pompey from the Inquirer. Look at that handsome fella. Look at that. Look. Here you go, bro. You look good, man. By the way, the mustache makes you look like you're 35.
That's sometimes the only dude in high school that had a mustache. It was crazy.
I love it. There you go, man. The great Keith Pompey from the Inquirer. Dude, I love you, man. Keep up the great work. And now that we're back in this format, so we'll be having you on a lot, as always.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. And again, I'm a big fan of your show.
Yeah, come on. We do this a long time, brother. You're the man. Great Keith Pompey from the Inquirer checking in.